Today is 9.2 percents and proportions. The most important part from this slide right here is this. Everyone say is over of.
Is over of.
Equals P over 100.
Equals P over 100.
All right, so this is something we're going to be using all throughout today's lesson, okay? So the main thing, I want you to go ahead, let's look through a few things. Is going to be the number that follows the word is. This is known as the part of the fraction. The of is known as the number that follows the word of, and this is going to be the whole part of a fraction. So let's just imagine that I have 3/4. Out of this means there's 4 total. So would that be my is or my of? My of, because that's the whole thing. Let's say that I've got 3. Is that my is or my of? It's my is because that is part of the fraction, okay? So if I say on Friday that only 3/13 of you guys were here, then what is my is? The 3 or the 13? The 3, because that's the part, and then 13 is the total because that's the total number of students that we have in our classroom. The final thing is percent. Anytime you see something that says like this, 50%, that would obviously be my percent because it's got that percent sign right there, okay? So we'll be using this information today. This is asking us to use a proportion to answer the question. Do you guys remember what a proportion is? It's when you have two fractions set equal to each other, okay? Two ratios set equal to each other. So here's the question that it's asking us. What percent of 30 is 3? Looking back at the original slide that we had, what is that proportion that I showed you guys that we're going to use in our lesson today? Keep reading me the whole thing, everyone. Is over of equals P over 100. All right, so let's go ahead and write that. Is over of equals P over 100. We're going to use this proportion to help us to find the answer. The first thing that it's asking us for is what percent. Which one of these, there's 3 unknowns, is, of, and P. Which one of those stands for percent?
P.
The P. So is it telling me in my question what the percent is?
No.
No, that's what we're trying to discover, okay? So now let's go back and see. Read to me where it says is, what the instructions are. What does it mean when you have an is?
The number that follows the word is.
The number that follows the word is. What number follows the word is?
3.
Is 3. So right here, what I'm going to do, where there's is, I'm going to go ahead and put a 3 instead of the word is. So now I'm going to have 3 over of. Up here in my original problem, does it tell me what the of is going to be?
30.
Yes, that is correct. It says of 30. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and plug that into where the of is. So I'm going to have 3 over 30 equals, and we already discovered it is asking us what percent, which means we don't know what the percent is. So we're going to go ahead and keep the P just as it is. So 3 over 30 equals P over 100. Does this look similar to anything we've done before? Yes. This is exactly what we did last week. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do our cross products, okay? So first things first, we're going to multiply 3 times 100 equals, what is it going to equal? 30 times P. Okay, that's our cross products that we did from last week. Alex, what's 3 times 100?
300.
300 equals 30p. Katie, how do I get that p by itself?
You have to divide by 30.
Divide by 30 on both sides. Okay, so this right here we know is going to cancel out, which will leave me just with a p on this side. And if I've got 2 zeros, I can cancel out both those zeros. What's 30 divided by 3? Or 300 divided by 30, either one. What is it? 10. Okay, now let's go back to our question. This is what it says. What percent of 30 is 3? So what should my answer be? 10% is the correct answer. B says 51 is 17% of what number? We're going to start with the same proportion that we did before. What's the original proportion we have to start with?
Is over of equals P over 100.
Is over of equals P over 100. Now, to me, the easiest thing to find is the P. What does the P stand for?
Percent.
Percent. If you look at your original problem, does it give us a percent? What's it give us? 17%. So guess what? There's only going to be 1%. So does that stand for my is, my of, or my p? It stands for this right here because that is the percent. All right. So now I know that I am going to go ahead and I don't know my is over of yet, but I do know that my percent is going to be 17 over 100. Remember from yesterday's lesson or from last week, 17% is the same thing as 17 over 100. So this makes sense that 17% is the same thing right there as 17 over 100. All right, so now let's try to figure out in my original problem, what do you think it has told me? Has it told me the is or has it told me the of? Some people think the is, some people think the of. Let's see if we can figure out. This right here says 51 is, and this says of what number? Which one do you think it tells me? It tells me the is, okay? So what am I going to write instead of is? 51. So let's erase this is over of, and that's going to be 51 over, do I know my of? No. It says of what number? So that's my mystery. So we're just going to put an X. Okay? Let's see, just before we did this by cross products, let's see if we can do this with equivalent ratios, okay? Because I don't care which way you find it. But let's see if there is a way to figure out getting from a 17 to a 51. How do you think I would get from a 17 to a 51? Multiply or divide? Multiply, because it's getting bigger. We're working this direction from a 17 to a 51. 17 times what number equals 51?
3.
Times 3, okay? If I multiply times 3 on bottom, because this says 17 times 3 equals 51, what do I have to do on the bottom? Okay, because I did it on the top, sorry. All right, so now 100 times 3 equals what?
300.
X equals 300. So now let's go back to the original problem. It says 51 is 17% of what number? So should this be 300%?
No.
No. Once again, it asks us of what number. Because it says what number, we're going to go ahead and just keep it as a number and not turn it into a percent. Okay, so your correct answer is 300. Okay, I want to go ahead and explain this to you. All right, let's imagine that in our class, we have 2 people absent out of 13. Okay, 2 out of 13 would be roughly 15% were absent. Does that mean that 15 people were absent?
No.
No, it means 15% of the class was absent. Okay, so like 15 out of 100 people. But note that percentage is not the same thing as a number. So be really careful. You do not want to turn this right here into a percentage because 300 is very different than 300%. This one asks you, what number is 14% of 350? Okay, so just by looking at the original problem, is this going to come out as a number or as a percentage?
Number.
It's going to be a number because it asks you what number. I want everybody to go ahead and start with the proportion that we learned today. What was that?
Is over of equals P over
Is over of equals P over 100. I want you to try to do this on your own and see if you can find what number is 14% of 350. Once again, I did see quite a few good answers. The easiest thing to see is that this says 14%. What should that be? My is, my of, or my percent? Okay, it's the P for percent, all right? 14% is the same thing as P over 100 or 14 over 100. As I walked around, though, I did see some people who said 14% over 100. You don't want to put a percent sign up there, okay? Because, once again, 14% means the same thing as 14 over 100. So get rid of that percent sign. Next up, which one do I know? The is or the of? The of, because it says of 350. So what's my unknown? The is. So I'm going to put an X right there, all right? So once again, so many of you guys did cross products, which was the way that you wanted to go. 100x equals 14 times 350. What is 14 times 350? 4,900. You're trying to get that x all by itself, so you divide it by 100. Once again, easy way to do this. You can get rid of the zeros, 2 zeros. 49 over 1 is 49. Okay, so when you go back to your question, it says what number is 14% of 350? The number is what? 49 is correct. How many of you got that correct on your own? Okay, good job. Next problem says what percent of 3 is 1? So we're going to start once again. When we're trying to find these percents, we'll always do is over of equals p over 100. Going back and just double checking, it asks what percent. So is this going to come out as a percent or as a number? It's going to be a percent, okay? So look very carefully and see if you can plug in your is, your of, or your p. I want you to try to find this answer on your own. As I looked around, a few of you did have it correct. First up, I am looking for the percent. So I know I don't know the p yet because I want to find the percent. Next up, I can see that I am looking for my is and my of. What is my is?
Your is 3.
Is 1. Okay, so I know it's going to be 1 over, what's my of?
3.
Of 3. 1 over 3 equals p over 100. So once again, we're going to go ahead and do our cross products. And we know 1 times 100 equals 3p. 1 times 100 is 100. Your goal is to get p by itself, so you're going to divide both sides by 3. Now, once again, this is where people had some struggles, okay? I told you to round to the nearest tenth. When you look at it, you got 33.3 repeating. That means 0.33333, all right? So remember, you are rounding this. You're simply trying to figure out, by that number, is it 5 or bigger? Yes or no? No. So what's my answer to the nearest tenth? 33.3%. That's where a lot of people forgot to tell me the answer is a percent. All right, so that would equal your P. 33.3% is the percentage of 3 is 1. Okay? How many of you actually got that correct with the percent sign and rounding correctly? All right, fantastic job. All right, Michael, help me with this one. What is 32% of 200? What should I start my proportion with?
Oh, your proportion should be is over of equals p over 100.
Great job. Landon, do I know my percent?
Yes, we do.
What is it?
32.
Okay, so I'm going to simply be plugging that into the P right there because 32% is the same thing as 32 over 100. Emma, do I know my is? No. If you look right here, it says what is. So the is going to be my unknown. Isabel, do I know my of?
Yes.
What is it?
200.
Good job. Of 200. Now let's just go ahead and do equivalent ratios. If you're looking at equivalent ratios, how do I get from a 100 to a 200? Multiply by 2. If I multiply by 2 on the bottom, I have to
Multiply by 2 on the top.
multiply by 2 on the top. Okay, Asia, what would my answer be? X equals 64. Now, I'm going to go back through to my question where it says, what is 32% of 200? Is it 64%? No, okay. It doesn't ask you. And also, you can see we've already got a percentage up there, so we're not going to do another one. So your correct answer is 64 is 32% of 200. Okay, final problem of the day says, a company is accepting applications for new hires. They can only hire 60 out of the 300 applicants. What percent of the applicants can the company hire? Is this going to come out as a percent or as a number? A percent. You can simply go back to see what percent, okay? So let's just go ahead and start off with the formula that we've had today. Is over of equals P over 100. When you have a story problem, it's not always going to have the words is or of to help you figure it out real quick. But I want you to go back to the very original notes. There were 2 words that I put in parentheses at the end of the definitions that you had for is and of.
Whole and part and whole.
Part and whole, okay? Which one was the part? Is the part, okay? So when you're trying to figure out something, this right here will just help you to know this is going to be the part of the fraction, and what will this be?
The whole.
What's your of?
It's on freeze.
The whole is what the of will be, okay? So looking at this, it says they can only hire 60 out of the 300 applicants. Of those numbers, which one is the part? 60. Which one is the whole?
300.
Okay, because we know they can only do 60, which is part of all whole of the applicants that are coming. And then we're trying to find the percent, but we don't know the percent yet. Okay, this is the most difficult part, setting up your is over of equals P over 100. Just remember, is over of is part over whole. Okay, you guys try to find this answer on your own. How many of you would say that you did yours by cross products? Okay, for those of you who did cross products, what you would do, as I was saying, you would have 60 times 100 equals 300 times P. Okay, so this would be 600 equals 300P. You have to divide by 300 on both sides. And what do you get when you did this?
P equals 20%.
Okay, P equals, thank you for remembering, 20%. Now, how many of you would say you did yours by equivalent ratios? Okay, if you chose to do it with equivalent ratios, you had 60 over 300 equals P over 100. Let's just see if we get the same answer. What is my missing link in between the two of them? What about 3? Divide by 3 to get from 100 or 300 to 100. You got to divide by 3 on top and bottom. What is 60 divided by 3? 20. So P equals 20%. All right. So either one, you should have gotten the correct answer. They can hire 20% of the applicants. Okay. All right. Go ahead and pull out another piece of paper for tonight's homework. All right. This is your homework for 9.2.